Hello everybody, welcome and good afternoon. Before I start, I would like to say something and extend my gratitude to Mrs. Gibson Coney. She probably would hate me for saying this because just now, before the selfie break, that's probably her last public speaking here in China after 15 years. And I was so overwhelmed to be there and listen to you for the last time. Thank you so very much for all your wonderful work of inspiring lives and shaping minds here and everywhere in China. Thank you so very much. So back to my talk today. Today my topic is called Creativity in English Learning. And when we're actually talking about creativity in English learning, this topic can seem a little strange and eccentric, since English learning is not necessarily a fun kind of experience for, well, most of us. For some other people, it's actually unpleasant. So when we are actually talking about this specific creativity, we would automatically go to the ideas of how creative method would make the work done more efficiently or even more productively. And that is exactly the first part of my talk today, of how I accidentally find the creative method of doing something belong to the part, actually one of the most tedious part of English learning experience, which is the, sorry, yes, it's not really working. It's called the vocabulary memorization. Thank you, it showed up. Well, this inevitable learning experience will come to haunt you day in and day out, trust me on that. And until you accomplish something that requires this assignment in the first place, well, that something could be either a test, or another test, or several other tests. So, my first story I would like to share with you today is also involved with a test. And back in 2011, I made a decision of pursuing a PhD degree in the area of second language study. So that decision and that goal of mine required me that I needed to achieve a very decent score in a particular test called GRE. So for those of you who have very little knowledge about this particular test, it's called the Graduate Record Examination. Well, one of the main features of this test, it's very high demand on the vocabulary level. It means that if you don't know or understand the meaning of the words, you probably won't have much of a chances to achieve a decent result that you have expected to have. So, like most of the test takers, I began my study plan for this test by varying myself with all the vocabulary lists that I could find at that time. And it was very painful. And that was me back then. And I think this picture pretty much says it all about the process of that. And but the most excruciating part was neither the tiring process nor the difficulty of the test, but the fact that I was so frustrated by the low productivity and the low efficiency. Because the more I tried to remember the words, the more I forgot. Sounds very familiar, right? So, the frustration continued to pile on to the point that forced me to either come up with something to resolve that issue or simply just to give up. And luckily, I had an epiphany one day. And that epiphany was coming from a lot of reminding of one attribute of mine, which is that I have a relatively attractive voice. Okay, yeah, thank you for agreeing with me, by the way. So, at that point, I was so sick of all the original listening materials, reading the vocabulary list, the spelling, the explanation, the examples in the sentences. So I was wondering, why not take advantage of my own voice? I mean, if I read them, I could be much more interested in them. So that was exactly what I did. I used a recording device to read all the vocabulary lists that I find at that time, and I used my sexy voice. So I read them and record them. Afterwards, I listen to them repeatedly every day on various circumstances, like on my way to school, on my way home, when I was cooking in the bathroom, before I go to bed. Every chances I have, I listen to it. And I would like to show you one of the examples I still keep today.
Ephemera. Ephemera. E-P-H-E-M-E-R-A-L. Ephemera. 形容词，朝生暮死的。名词，只生存一天的事物。Ephemera.
Okay, I know. Sexy. Okay. So, I used this method, but gradually, this typical of reading and spelling of the words wasn't really cutting the effect. It lost its effectiveness due to the fact that, well, it became a little boring to me. It wasn't enough to keep me focused. So I needed to find some, memory tools to serve as the, to keep me concentrating on listening to the recording of my own voice. So I decided to add some improvisation into the recording. And one thing that I use is called antonym and synonym, which means that I paired the words with different meanings and same meanings, and I explained myself through the recording, which was a big part of the GRE back then. So another example about this is like this.
Cartographer, cartographer, map. Cartographer 是画地图的人 ，map 是地图，所以相近的一组词是 lexicographer。lexicographer 和 dictionary。lexicographer 是编写字典的人。哎，就是你们这帮编写字典的人，还有老师现在要进备产，还有就是编诗。
Okay, thank you. Well, long story short, eventually I kept practicing this method for over 2 months, and I got a very decent result of that test. But that's not the best part. The best part is that through this process, I accumulated a profound fascination in the English language, specifically the words. I was in love with the words, just the words. I find beauty within this beautiful, all the beautiful syllables and consonants within different spellings. Let me show you a couple of the examples, okay? This is my favorite word in the world. It's called serendipity. It means the fortune to find beautiful things. Serendipity. Just feel the syllables and consonants that are toiling around between your tongue and your lips. Serendipity. What a beautiful word, right? Another one. Trust me, another one. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Okay, once again, this is actually a name for a song. It's such a playful word, right? Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Such a playful word. Last one, I promise. Pneumonia virtual microscopic silicovolcanocyanosis. Yes. This happened to be the longest word ever documented in the Oxford Dictionary, maybe, yeah. Pneumonia virtual microscopic silicovolcanocyanosis. Just the words with the sound seems so beautiful to me. And I admit I was a little bit showing off. But back to my point. My point is that when it comes to how creativity can improve the efficiency and the productivity in your English learning, I believe that the essence of that kind of creativity is the force that will drive you to get back to the work even when you are frustrated by any form of disappointment. And that's my first part of the talk today. And I think in the second part, I would like to expand the concept of creativity in English learning a little bit more. Well, from the creative method to something I would like to call today self-reflecting mechanism. It means that sometimes the creative things can happen when they were least expected. But once they do, they will provide you with a new perception about something you used to strongly believe in. And my second story I would like to share with you today is about how I changed my understanding of English learning and how that change led me to the possibility of so much more creativities in English learning. And it all starts with something we're all familiar with. It's called oral English proficiency. My professor of my current PhD study, Professor Margie Burns in Purdue University, she captured a social-linguistic reality in general of English as second language or English in foreign language countries about the concept of motto. It's that she said the concept of motto in the context of education in ESL and EFL countries implies a state of linguistic ideal. The motto represents a norm of standard for language use at all levels, phonological to discursive. That was back in 1990. And currently, this generalization seems a little, especially to us, the Chinese English learner, a little self-evident, axiomatic even, because we're all very comfortable with the reality that we learn English, and we learn American and British English as the standard English. And I used to be one of them, those believers, and I was so obsessed with to be sound like an American English speaker. That obsession led me to different learning experiences, but down along the way, something took place and changed my mind about this, a concept called native-like competence, right? We all aspire to have this, the native-like competence, because we consider those who have this competence as the most proficient English user in ESL or EFL context. But that incident changed my mind about this. And that took place back in 2010 when I first embarked upon the overseas learning study in Arizona State University. And one day, I made a phone call to a company that I don't remember, and about something I don't even remember either. But the following conversation is something I will always remember. Conversation goes like this. The operator on the other side asked for my name. I said, my name is Yiyang Lee. And he said, wow, you sure don't sound like a Lee. And I asked, what do you mean? And he answered, you speak way better English. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a few seconds to think about these two sentences. You sure don't sound like a Lee. You speak way better English. Normally, this seems like a compliment to me, but at that moment, I was so offended. Because somehow, for some reason, my English failed his stereotypical expectation of what a Chinese English speaker should sound like. And in his mind, someone with an American accent is better than someone with other kinds of accents. So after that, I kept thinking about two questions. Why people with an American accent is bound to be seen as someone who has better English? Or why do people always assume the fact that using other variety of English languages is the equivalent of using the non-standard English? These two questions struck my mind. And from that, I started to see things differently. I used to think that English's beauty lies within the simplicity and its global use. But now, I think I was wrong. I think the real beauty of English language is its very diversity. Think about it. Okay, we all have our preferences for different varieties of English, right? Some people might find American English soothing, comforting. Some people find British English, a man with a woman with British accents to be absolutely charming. Some people might even find Baloo's English irresistible, right? I did. But, however, when it comes to something I would like to call China English, we frown upon it. We laugh at it. We even give names to that Chinglish. Something seems worse than other English. Why do we have that mentality? Why do we think that China English is something inferior? I objected that mentality, and I think my objection is supported by many examples, and I would like to show you a couple. Meet Joe Wang, the first Chinese native comedian that ever performs on the stage of the White House Correspondent Dinner. Check out his English.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Wang. But to most people, I am known as who?
That was the White House Correspondent Dinner. He delivered his comedic acts and he made them laugh. And by them, I mean the White House cabinet members, including the Vice President of the United States, and the whole room of the news media elites. He made them laugh. Meet Ha Jing, a Chinese native writer who writes in English as his second language, who also writes the story exclusively about China. He's a award-winning writer, novel, and poets with thousands of readers who appreciate his work. And here are some of the examples in his writing. The elements of Chinese culture and Chinese social reality are filled within his writing, and it fascinates people. It fascinates his readers. And for me personally, nothing is more genius than substituting the phrase son of a B word with son of a rabbit. That's just pure linguistic creativity to me. And these linguistic creativity are precisely representing the possibility of what we can do by bringing Chinese culture into English language. And, well, why in the world would we want to consider that as something inferior? Currently, my field of research is called World Englishes. That's right, it's called World Englishes. That's not a grammatical error. That's exactly what it is. That is by far the most creative things I have ever done in my life. And I am currently promoting the awareness and the idea of the existence of different varieties of English in the world. And there's nothing bad and wrong and good or better. That's just a reality. But allow me to say this, that I am certainly not trying to persuade everybody to speak English with an accent or some other linguistic behavior. I'm not trying to do that, and I won't do that. I'm simply just asking everybody to embrace the characteristics of the possible China English and open your eyes to see the beauty when two cultures encounter within one language. Before I end my talk today, I would like to reiterate a fact that it is very much okay for everybody to learn English for different motivation. Actually, there are two categories of learning motivation for English learning. One is called instrumental motivation. That is for the practical things like jobs, like tests. The other two is called integrative learning motivation. It's about the desire to be accepted by the different language community. Either way, you can find your own creative method throughout the process. But for me personally, I think the best kinds of creativity take place when it helps you achieve your goals and also make you embrace something new or something seems unacceptable. Because those are the things that will knock your socks off. Thank you very much.